and sunk temperatures to near record lows. Communities have been isolated, schools have been closed, and the country ground to a halt. Hundreds trapped in their cars for 10 hours and more. Children forced to sleep in their schools, cut off from their families. In this STV News special, we'll be reporting from the north, south, east and west, hearing your stories and asking how could the country be so crippled by the weather. This is Scotland in the deep freeze. Good evening. What a week it's turning out to be. Scotland is back in the grip of the big freeze, shivering in record-breaking cold weather. The Central Belt is going through the perfect storm. Just yesterday, 3 hours of heavy snowfall right in the middle of rush hour resulted in quite horrendous problems for thousands of drivers. Well done for making it home tonight, and stay with us over the next half hour as we're live across the whole of Scotland with our team of reporters. And with me throughout this evening's programme, STV weather forecaster Sean Batty. Sean, what's going on?
Well, we did actually have a weather advisory and warnings out on Sunday for the snowfall in central parts on Monday night. I put out on Twitter, so it's keep people informed on that. Now, it's rather like last year. You remember the jet stream went an awful lot further south. That's the same sort of situation we've got at the moment. High pressure sitting to the west of us, low pressure to the east. So we've got northerly winds and hence the very, very cold weather, which is just getting worse and worse at the moment. I've actually got a beautiful satellite picture to show you that was taken earlier on today, and you can see Scotland almost covered north to south, east to west. There is the exception of the lower ground of Mull, around Rum, Egg and some lower lying areas in the west. But yeah, it's very, very cold, and we've still got reports of nearly a metre of snow lying in places. OK, Sean, more from you later in the programme. Scotland, as Sean says, and as that picture showed you, is under a snow blanket. Stunningly beautiful, but disturbingly unpredictable. First, we have the view from the air. Nicola McCally travelled by helicopter to see Scotland's winter wonderland.
Jutting proudly above the frozen chaos of the roads below, the Wallace Monument shrouded in fog. The snowscape was spectacular as we set off on our journey from the Highlands. But as we travelled further south, it became evident just how much the wintry weather had been wreaking havoc on the highways. The M80, which had seen drivers stuck in their cars overnight, still had a few abandoned vehicles dotted along the route, although gritters were on the move. On the A80, lorries were making slow progress and a number of cars were still stuck near Airdrie. The legend this lorry bore was slightly ironic in the circumstances. On the railways, many services were subject to delay and cancellations. At Bonnybridge, we thought we'd spotted an operational service, but it soon ground to a halt, with the driver disembarking to try to make tracks for help on foot. But the true measure of chaos seemed to be in evidence on the M74. As far as the eye could see, lines of lorries and cars snaking along the carriageways. A mini car, but a major problem. Just one of the hundreds of people still digging their vehicles out this morning. It appeared a number of cars had been involved in minor accidents, and jackknife lorries caused further headaches for would-be commuters.
The bird's-eye view of hundreds of cars and lorries stranded all across Scotland is quite incredible. Many are starting to move, albeit slowly, but it's going to be some time yet before Scotland's transport network returns to normal.
Nicola McCally in the skies above Scotland. Dramatic pictures there, but the real drama happened overnight. Hundreds of drivers were stranded in their cars in Lanarkshire, Stirlingshire and West Lothian, stuck in the middle of motorway misery, many having taken hours to move less than a mile. Thankfully, most are back home safe and well. But for the situation right now, Gordon Cree is at the nerve centre for Scotland's road network, Traffic Scotland. Gordon, how's it looking tonight?
Well, John, this is a very busy place, the control centre for Traffic Scotland. Information coming in here all the time to the people working here. They're in constant contact with police control rooms, with councils, with the people driving the gritters and the snow ploughs, all feeding back about the condition, the state of the motorways and the main A roads. What we do with that information, it allows them to make the strategic decisions. It also allows them to pass that information on to drivers through the website and also through the travel bulletins on the radio, which are broadcast from here as well. One of the main resources, of course, is the network of CCTV cameras. Checking these tonight, we can see problems on the main route between Glasgow and Edinburgh. The A8 just at Shaw Head there. Lorries having problems getting up the hill. That's causing things to be backed up quite dramatically. Also, the M8 coming out of Edinburgh, they've taken the decision to close that between Hermiston Gate and Hart Hill. You can see things very quiet there. Of course, it was here they first became aware of the gridlock situation yesterday. That continued through the night, and I caught up with some of those desperately trying to get home.
3 o'clock this morning on the A80 near Steps. In freezing temperatures and going nowhere, many motorists stuck here had set out yesterday morning.
I left Livingston at 11 o'clock this morning. Managed to get here about midnight, and I've been sitting stationary for the last 3 hours.
And where are you trying to get to?
Condorett. 5.5 miles up the road to get home.
Progress was painfully slow.
We've been travelling all day, but when we came here, we've just came to a standstill. But we've been sitting in this one position now for 2.5 hours.
I left work at midday, ended up at Asda, Rob Royston, parked up there till midnight and left here to try and get to Cumbernauld, and I'm still stuck here. So I've started walking to the Crowwood to go to the toilet. 2 hours here, but all in all, 14, nearly 15 hours.
With no sign of gritters or snowplows, some drivers attempted to clear the road themselves.
I mean, I'm suitably kitted out because I knew that the weather had been like this over the last week, but I'm just really tired and hungry, and I've got a husband and children at home, and so it's just causing great anxiety.
And more misery on the M8 with slip roads closed and queues backing up, like here at Whitburn.
We headed down to Dumbarton about 7 o'clock this morning. Got to Dumbarton about 9 o'clock. Had to head back up the road because of the weather, and we've been stuck here for 10 o'clock this morning.
By this morning's rush hour, many roads were still full of abandoned vehicles, making efforts to get them clear ever more difficult.
So some horrendous stories there last night, and one of the things most of the people were saying to me was that they needed information about why they were stuck in the queues that they were in. Well, joining me now is Steen Connolly, who is the operations director here. How do you get that information out to drivers who are stuck in their cars?
Well, you mentioned earlier about the information we're gathering in the control centre here. We try and get that out using the variable message signs, and we report directly with the radio broadcast from the control centre here. So that's live and up to date. So we ask people to tune into the radio when they're travelling about.
Now, one of the things we've seen from the cameras tonight, very quiet at Hermiston Gate. Why has that decision been taken to close the M8 out of Edinburgh to Hart Hill?
Well, they've been working all day trying to clear the road of the ice that's on the road. We've had to bring in road breakers to break up the ice. We've broken 2 snowploughs trying to clear that today. So we're working all night on that, and the decision is that it probably won't be open. It's unlikely that it'll be open until after the peak tomorrow morning.
You've been helped today by people staying off the roads. Is that the same advice for the morning?
The police are giving the advice out. Don't make any unnecessary journeys. If you need to make a journey, plan well in advance. Look at the Traffic Scotland website. That will be up to date. And if you've not got access to the website, use the Trunk Road customer care line. OK, thanks for joining us. Steen Connolly there, the Operations Director at Traffic Scotland. Huge efforts continuing both in the control centre here and out on the roads to get the network clear. But for the moment, the advice from the police remains don't travel unless it's necessary. Live from here, John, back to you.
Gordon, thank you. In Edinburgh now, the Transport Minister, Stuart Stevenson. Mr Stevenson, were the people of Scotland let down last night?
I think what happened was we had a forecast situation for 5 to 10 centimetres of snow. While that was broadly correct, there were very substantial falls in localised areas that are precisely where our motorway network goes through. So to that extent, we encountered conditions, the eye of a storm, very substantially different from those that we'd planned. We'd had gritters out in the evening on Sunday, preparing for for a return to work, and we were hit by this at the precise point when the maximum number of people were in the network.
Does that suggest, though, that there is not enough slack in the system? OK, you were prepared for what was forecast, but sometimes things do go differently, and we weren't ready for that. Why is that?
I think I would take a different view in that we had all the available equipment out working on our trunk road network, but we had a quite exceptional snowfall when the network was very full, and that was substantially difficult to deal with. I think the key thing that we learned was the need for additional information. When we, with Strathclyde Police, set up a helpline, we saw in the first 12 hours of operation 7,000 calls, because I think that's been the thing where we've had to make the most substantial improvement.
But Minister, people were sitting in cars for hours last night, hours, and they didn't see an official soul. Why was that?
One of the difficulties that all the services who were seeking to support the road network and users of it, was that with a substantial number of vehicles on the road and substantial number of vehicles that had been abandoned, it was very difficult to get there. But we did, of course, by a process of working our way through huge numbers, hundreds of police out working, make contact to make sure that the needs of people who were stuck in the network were being addressed. But we have had formidable weather conditions that we're continuing to deal with, particularly as we've heard on the westbound M8.
You'll be making a statement to Parliament tomorrow. What sort of areas need to be considered briefly?
I think there's a range of areas. I think we clearly need weather forecasts that give us more localised information. We'll be looking at what our requirements are there. We will be looking at the provision of information for the road network users. And of course, we'll be looking at the way in which we've worked with local councils and other bodies.
In a sentence, Minister, some people demanding that heads should roll. Will you be resigning over this?
The absolute focus that we have at this stage is making sure that we resolve the issues. That's what people are demanding of us. That's what we are engaged in doing.
Stuart Stevenson, thanks for joining us. Well, Sean joining us again. Sean, we're hearing the government blaming the forecasts. What do you say to that?
Sean, let's be very clear about this. The Met Office don't produce forecasts for all of the Scottish councils, so it is actually the responsibility of other weather groups given for some councils. So the Met Office do provide information for some, though. The Met Office did have advisories, weather warnings out, appropriate 2 to 5 centimetres of snow to fall in places, although it did fall a little bit short of the snowfall that actually fell during Monday in that spell of heavy weather. Something else we've got to bear in mind is when you get temperatures below -5, -6, which luckily in this country is fairly rare, the grit that you put out in the road, doesn't matter how much you put out in the roads are still going to be icy. It almost becomes ineffective. So really, it does look as if it was maybe the grit, perhaps, falling onto roads that were, well, very cold already, and layers upon layers of snow with lots of ice out there too.
Is it your feeling, perhaps, that the government are hiding behind this, or do you think that the information was there, it just wasn't properly used?
Well, as I said, the Met Office only provide the information to certain councils, but the information was there. The warnings were out for 2 to 5 centimetres of snow. As I said, it wasn't as much, perhaps, as was expected, first of all.
Sean, for the moment, thank you again. Well, the north of Scotland, of course, is pretty used to harsh winters. Claire Stewart is in a Boyne in Royal Deeside tonight. Claire, how is it there?
Well, John, we certainly pride ourselves on being made of pretty stern stuff up here, and certainly here in Aboyne they've seen some really tough winters over the years, but I don't think anybody expected winter to hit quite so soon or so hard. You can see there's been a fair bit of snowfall here. I think we're estimating around ½ a metre of snow is accumulating in certain places, and you can see just how cold it's been all over Deeside. Spectacular displays of icicles wherever you go, and that's because we've seen temperatures dropping to as low as -20 in Braemar, which is just up the road. But I think we knew that winter had really started to bite when travellers became stuck on the A9 and had to be allowed to spend the night in community centres. In Dundee, they've also been hit quite hard. The Civil Defence Force had to be called in there to get Meals on Wheels to the elderly and disabled, people who couldn't get out of their houses. Farmers too, spare a thought for them. Heavy accumulations of snow onto barn and shed roofs is bad news because they can collapse. We've already had several incidents where livestock have been killed. And in Aberdeen, problems getting offshore workers back out to the rigs, and that means some people have been stranded out there for quite a few days. Now, over the last few days, we have had a bit of a respite from from the snow. But when it hits you guys down south, it's really bad news for us too, because the road and rail networks are crossed off, and that means that we can't get vital food and fuel supplies up here. And anybody who's been in a supermarket round here recently knows that we're running pretty low, and there are reports too that fuel is now starting to be rationed. But it's not all doom and gloom. Of course, an early winter means longer time skiing on the slopes.
Claire in Aboyne, thank you. And a reminder, you can keep up to date on our website, stv.tv/Big Freeze. Well, of course, the other big challenge over the past week or so has been keeping schools open. Pat Waters from the council's organisation COSLA is with us tonight. It's been a nightmare for parents. What dictates these decisions?
Well, I think it's safety first of all, you know, the safety of the children, you know, upmost, as that's what authorities look at, you know, that and looking at what the implications are for the wider school population. But really, it's the safety of the pupils, you know, first and foremost, and that's in the uppermost in authorities' mind when they're taking decisions about schools.
The big issue last week was some people saying, well, there's been blanket closure of schools by authorities. This week, people say they haven't been told early enough. How do you deal with these issues?
Well, I think it's about, you know, local decision being made locally. You know, like I said, there was a lot of furore last week when, you know, an authority took a decision quite late, and that decision was taken because they were wanting to ensure that they had no other option but to take that. You know, and so therefore the late was. But can I say, when even that was done, you know, staff were on hand, nobody was turned away from the school, kids were looked after. When you're looking at the situation we had yesterday and today, you know, like I say, particularly, you know, schools were open yesterday morning because it was fine yesterday morning, you know, and gradually they shut during the day. Now that's the worst of all worlds for parents.
That also creates a problem, does it not? Because it seems a lot of systems crashed, a lot of communication systems, text systems, and parents weren't getting messages till a lot later. Surely this is when these systems have to work.
Can I say, I mean, I can understand that. I mean, I never get one email through in my BlackBerry yesterday, and I got them all through this morning. You know, my phone wasn't working yesterday. It just kept saying, you know, no signal available. You know, but can I say that even in my authority, we had nearly 100 kids stayed in school overnight. We had over 100 teachers stayed with them to make sure they were looked after and prepared meals for them. You know, and that's an example of staff going that extra mile to ensure that the safety of the children is paramount.
Some people very briefly have been asking for advice. If they can't go to their own school, teachers, for example, and other schools are open, should they go there? What's their legal position if they've been told not to travel?
I think it's up to the authority to give them that advice locally. You know, like saying that would be done, you know, locally. It's not a general advice we give out right throughout Scotland, but it's a matter for each education authority to give that advice to teachers.
Pat Waters, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, communities up and down the country are pulling together. Good old-fashioned community spirit is what is getting many through these days. David Marsland joins us now from the village of Doon near Stirling. David, what problems have they had there?
Well, John, the biggest problem has been just getting in and out of the place. They had a foot of snow fall here on Sunday when they were only expecting 2 or 3 centimetres, and here we are joined by a few of the locals this evening, not put off by the fact that it's minus 13 degrees right now. Talking about that community spirit, well, a lot of the people who live here are commuters who don't spend an awful lot of time in their home village, but being locked out of anywhere else, being unable to get out of anywhere else, has meant they've had to rediscover what's on their doorstep. And a lot of people have said that's actually brought this community much closer together. It's cold enough to freeze the beard on a gargoyle. For 500 years, Doon Castle's decorations have warded off evil spirits, but this winter has beaten even them. This is where the Monty Python team filmed part of their Holy Grail movie, a proud claim to fame for a tiny village of just 1,200 people. The movie is celebrated as part of local history, and so too perhaps will be the events of the last few days, days that have brought weather just as surreal as a Monty Python script.
Well, I shoved a ruler onto our front grass and that came to 10 inches, but I mean in some places on top of the car there's definitely more snow than that. But I must admit I haven't made a further foray. I've just been trying to cope with the general situation without doing any further measurement.
They're taking it with good humour, but the impact has been hard. Winding streets made for medieval times can't handle the seemingly never-ending snowfall. That's led to the cancellation of the kind of local events that communities like this hold dear. It's just too dangerous to get around.
The party has been running at this time every year for the last 30 years. I've been doing it for 12 years, but this year we've had to postpone because the weather's atrocious. The roads are blocked, the pavements are blocked, and all our old age pensioners are struggling to get out and about.
But there has been one positive effect. The village store and other shops have never been busier. People trapped inside the village have been forced to find out what's available close to home. They seem to like it.
They came in and all the bread and milk was cleared off the shelves within minutes. I've had to go to the dairy 3 times to get milk because the lorries haven't been able to get through. So I mean, it's great to see all the people from the village coming in. Obviously we have a wide range of things and we always try to provide, and it's great to see new customers coming in who hopefully will come back again after the snow's disappeared.
Still, with deliveries hard to come by, the village shops are hoping the weather improves soon. Right now, a night without snow would be as welcome as the Holy Grail itself. Well, it is minus 13 tonight, which is why most people are off the streets. There are a few people out here tonight. But one place that is busy is a local bar, the Red Lion Inn. I'm joined now by a man who really is called Jamie Oliver. You're the landlord of the Red Lion Inn. What have people been saying about this?
Well, I mean, it's not been seen like this for quite some time, you know. Certainly colder than it normally is, a lot more snow than normally is as well. But people get on with it, you know. You can't just stop just because of the bit of weather, so.
And people have been talking about the community being kind of locked in here, unable to get out of Doon. Have you seen new faces or maybe old faces coming back?
Certainly been busier anyway. A few of the nights it's just normally been like a Saturday night, Friday night. But I've had a couple of newcomers coming in because of people just getting stuck in their cars. I've had a couple from Elgin that were stuck, a couple from Aberdeen just coming in, just couldn't get anywhere, you know, on certain nights. So
would you welcome this weather to continue?
Well, to an extent, yes, but it's getting a bit too cold now, so I think it's maybe time.
Jamie, that's all we need for now. Thanks very much.
David Marsland there, as some locals got involved in the act. Well, in both the west and east of Scotland, the Scottish Ambulance Service has called army drivers to help in this emergency situation and also to transfer patients and reach the sick and the vulnerable. Sharon Frew has spent the day with a paramedic team.
So this is more like the conditions what we've been facing.
They're used to dealing with challenging situations, but for paramedics in these extreme conditions, the hard work starts the moment they get behind the wheel. Using 4x4s, crews have been able to reach those in need in areas where normal ambulances are struggling.
Was he shaking or anything? No, just passed out. Apparently the old guy has had 6 seizures since yesterday morning, but didn't want to call the emergency services out. But the gentleman's going to the Vale leaving hospital now, so it just shows you really what people are willing to put up with and not put the service under any stress.
Others taken to hospital in Land Rovers in the last 24 hours have included 3 pregnant women. With resources stretched, the ambulance service has now called on extra help from the military.
This response unit has been given the use of 4 Army Land Rovers and 1 Army ambulance. The vehicles have no blue flashing lights or sirens and can only stick to the normal speed limits, but they're proving to be invaluable in these treacherous conditions.
This off-road vehicle is only ever brought out in the most extreme circumstances. Yesterday the ambulance service was forced to use it twice.
We've now arrived on scene.
While the extreme conditions persist, people are being urged to only call 999 if it's a genuine emergency.
Well, with me now is Alison Love from the WRVS. Particularly difficult time this year for elderly people.
Absolutely, John. It's been really difficult for our elderly and infirm, especially across Scotland with the weather. We have our volunteers working tirelessly out there to make sure that they are all being dealt with. Our Meals and Wheels services have been disrupted. Our services in retail have also been disrupted, but we're working tirelessly to ensure that we're getting to the most vulnerable. We're working with social work and our local authorities to ensure we're getting there.
And at this point in time, you're finding that you are getting to people. There's nobody being left alone. There's nobody struggling.
Absolutely. We're working with social work to ensure that we're telephoning round to make sure that people are contacted and that they have the essential aids in to keep them going.
And what advice would you give to people, to neighbours?
Well, this is a time for the communities to be extra vigilant for the elderly in their area. We're asking them to go and make sure the elderly are okay, pop in, say hello.
Some people might be a wee bit uncomfortable with that. Maybe people want the privacy. How do you deal with that?
Absolutely. It's a case of just making good neighbours, making sure that they know who they're who they're speaking to, and that making sure that they're well, they're safe, warm and well, they're getting essentials, bread and milk in, clearing their path to perhaps even try and get them out.
And very briefly, it's common sense advice, really.
Absolutely. Just make sure, keep warm and well until hopefully this weather clears up.
Hopefully soon enough. Alison, thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
Well, let's come back to Sean. We've had a very difficult week. Looking ahead, is it going to get any better?
Well, let's hope we're back up here in July and August talking about a heat wave. But no, I'm afraid it is going to be staying very, very cold. Tonight, we're already down to about -15 through the central lowlands, around -5, -6 in the north, because they continue to hang on to the snow showers. By the time we get Friday and Saturday, temperatures +8, +9. It is going to feel positively balmy by then, but a little bit of a thaw before the very cold, extreme weather comes back later next week with the heavy snow returning in places, and that takes us all the way up to Christmas. Because we've got a wee bit of a thaw this weekend, the cold weather back next week, it does look as if those icy conditions are going to be back, and perhaps treacherous conditions as we head up to Christmas as well.
So you're talking about conditions like this right up to Christmas. There's going to be this brief spell relief for the weekend, and then it's like this right through to Christmas.
That's right. It looks like just a mild blip, and then we go back to what I was talking about earlier on. High pressure to the west of us, low pressure to the northeast. We get the northerlies, so it's going to be very cold on the run up to Christmas by the looks of it.
I was hoping to hear better from you, Sean, but that's the way it is. That's the way it is. Sean, thank you. Well, that's it from your news team at STV on this bitterly cold December night, a night that follows a day of turmoil for thousands of people in a long week of disruption, gridlock and standstill. In the warmth of your home this evening, you could perhaps be forgiven for dreaming of a Christmas that's not quite so white. Good night from all of us, keep warm and stay safe.
For men.
Are you dreaming of a smooth Christmas with love from Galaxy?
Your machine, sir.
Hello, George. Where am I? Make an educated guess. It's not my time. Maybe we could make an arrangement.
An espresso. What else?
Well, the rescue attempts get underway in a devastated Coronation Street in half an hour. First, though, on STV, our second visit to Emmerdale, where Aaron has some rather surprising news.
Standing up straight, I'm 10 feet tall.
Tombola, Britain's favourite bingo site, sponsors Emmerdale.
Whatever it is you're going to say, don't even bother.